Welcome to the Configuration Manager Administrator Dashboard Training. I'm your host, Matt Novich, and I'm a Microsoft employee for about 5 years now. Let's get this legal stuff out of the way just so that we can say we've covered it. This dashboard is not supported by Microsoft or Microsoft services in any way, so there's no warranties with it, or if you run into problems, you're just going to have to kind of fix it on your own. But please feel free to message me on the YouTube video or my GitHub. I will absolutely answer questions on that, along with my LinkedIn. And if you need the link, the GitHub video, it will be, or that GitHub video, the GitHub link, it'll be at the bottom of the video. So let's get started with this thing. First thing we want to do is we're going to open up the Power BI template. And I am using the Power BI desktop reporting services version. So mine will not be connecting to Azure. It is in my lab, and most of my customers have closed networks where they cannot connect to the network, or to the Azure rather, so I have set it up that way. All right, so first thing it's asking to do when it pops up here is asking for your SQL server. This is the server that is hosting your database for reporting. More than likely, it's probably going to be the same server the SCCM server's on, so in this case, I'm going to pop in my Azure server name. And then the reporting database is the default database name, which is created off the previous training video I did for installing the database. But if you've changed the name in any way, please make sure to update this name down here on the bottom. And then once you do that, click load. And it's going to go through, and it's going to pop up here and ask, hey, there's a native database query. We need to accept the permissions on this. And notice it's calling a store procedure in there. These are all the store procedures that we created on the previous training video with the database installation. This is just calling back to them and referencing them, so it gets all that data. And then it's going to come in here and say, hey, we need to make sure you're connected to the right database. Hit connect and hit OK. And then it's going to ask you again for the next one, and then it's going to do this for every single page there that's here. There's about 14 pages, so there's about 20 clicks, and the reason there's 20 and not 14 is because some of these pages have multiple queries that run with them, the collections one being one of them. But a note for this is you only have to do this the first time setting this up. For the PBIT file, once you save it as a PBI file, which is not the template file, all this stuff goes away and you don't have to worry about this again unless you're change databases again, and then you'll have to do this whole process again. But it should just more than likely be a one-time setup, so hopefully it won't be that too much of a burden on you that you get discouraged from running this. But once you go through and click run on all of these, you'll see it starts loading the data in here. And once it pops up here, we will start seeing here's all of our data that we have coming into the database, or from the database rather. If you look here, first thing on the top, we see collections name. We also get our update name, the status of that update, and then the total count of it, along with the workstations/servers that are impacted by whatever that patch may be. Right now, you get a list of all your devices just because you don't have anything filtered out. But if we click on, say, this update right here, it will actually show you the impacted machines that it was referring to when it said two are not required. You can do the same thing with if you have any that are required, you can click on those. The great thing about all that is when you click on this little box here, where is my little ellipsis? It is hiding down here. You can actually export that data out and get it saved over. So you can do what you need to for that. The fun part is going to be filtering everything out that you need. So if you wanted to say get this KB and only display this KB information, we have to close the visualizations, hit filters. Come on, filters. There we go. Hit update name. And then we have to start typing in the KB we want. So let's do KB. Let's pick the one that we have up there, 4497. And you can see it starts filtering them out. And then you can just check off the box for the one you want. We're going to highlight that, copy it. We're going to bring it down here on the bottom as well. Do the exact same thing. Check that off. And boom. Now you only have one KB to worry about. You can see it's just one. We're good. And for some reason, it's still not letting me export this correctly. So we will do it a different way later on, but don't worry about it. We do have this data, so it is readily available for you. But the big thing I wanted to highlight is the fact that it is showing you what the machines are that you need. You know, you can, worst case, you can highlight both of, all of them, whatever they may be, and pull it that way. But going back to what we were talking about, getting all the patches here, you can see now we have it filtered out. We can take a screenshot of this, send it over to, say, management, security, whoever's looking for that data, we can now get that. If we save this thing, which you can see at the top right now, it is set to untitled, which means this is not saved. It is still the template file. So when you go to File, if my Power BI wants to cooperate with me, there we go. File, Save As. We're going to save it as, right now, we're going to save it on the system itself, but we're also going to save it on the server as well. So we're just going to, give it a friendly name, something that, you guys can associate with. I'm just going to call mine CM database, or dashboard rather. Hit save. You can also go back, file, save as. We're going to save that thing over to the config manager server also, which is the Power BI reporting server. If you go into the config manager database, I actually created a folder that's just called Power BI reporting, and that has to deal with the, and this is from the previous demos that I've done this, so we're going to overwrite that. Yours will not say that. But yeah, this will allow you to publish it within config manager and give that URL to everyone so they don't have to have the PBI PBIT file or the PBIX file, or have Power BI on their desktop. They can just open it through a browser and be done with it. If you look down here on the bottom, we have workstations, and it shows the count again for here's all your workstations. And if we wanted those particular KBs, we can click on that, and then we can export that data, which will be your data right here, which is what I was trying to show you before. So apparently it does not work very well on the all patching because it's literally ingesting everything. So with that being said, we can do it a different way. It's not a big deal. If we go down to servers does the same thing. And then if you go to other will display your Defender, your malicious software tools, your third-party patching, Google, Firefox, anything like that, along with your Office updates will be listed in here. So the only thing that's listed under Workstation and Server here are your OS patches for those systems. So that's just something to point out. Going into the next set of slides here is the client health. So everyone has this different flavor of what they call client health. My particular take on it is going to be when's the last time the health evaluation was done, when was the last time software inventory was done, policy check-in, hardware inventory, the DDR record, and then the last time it was active. So if you get all of those the same across the board, then you'll be in good shape. I have purposely left a couple of mine broken for the hardware inventory, just so I could have some data to reflect and kind of show you that these counters do move. But you can look in the top here. We do have client versions, and the client versions on here. If you have multiple client versions, you can click on the different versions of there, and it'll filter over here on the right what versions you're missing. And if you start scrolling through your list, you can see, like I click on my CCM server and go, oh, look, my CCM server has 0 for software inventory. Well, that's because it's the one I'm missing patches for. Or not patches, sorry, the software scan for. And if you look at the workstation 2, you can also see it's missing that. So that's just a quick indicator of looking at it. But you can also click on Workstation 1 and see it's 100% compliant, so he's good to go across the board. And you can also look at my domain controller, and my domain controller, again, is 100% across the board. He's doing exactly what he's supposed to. So in this case, they're probably having either some client issues, or maybe they just didn't run the scan for some reason. That's part at least you need to investigate and kind of move along from there. The next slide is installed server roles. This will check everything that's under your installed features and installed server roles, from like IES to admin tools, to Windows Defender, to SQL Server, whatever the case may be. It's going to be in this list. It's a huge list. I used to have this as a pie graph, but with having this much list of information stuff in here, the pie graph was just, everything was so super tiny, it wasn't worth it. So I changed it to a bar graph. I kept it that way so we can kind of scroll through and find what we're looking for. It's like, so here's an example. Here's DNS, right? We click on DNS, and it's going to filter over here on the left-hand side and say, here's all your DNS servers. So you can do the same thing if you're looking for IIS. Let's find IIS at, it is down right there. Whoops, and I scrolled too far. So you click on IIS and it shows, and again, I have a small environment, so it's one server. That's not a big deal, but you can, again, export this data out. Boom, you can get a list. It's really helpful if you're following the STIG guidance from DoD or the guidance provided by them to lock down servers, or if you just have any kind of hardening that your environment does, you can export this, get a list, and go, hey, does our list of our IIS boxes match up to what we reconcile with? You can do the same thing with SQL Server if you're trying to identify, hey, where's all of our SQL servers? Here, boom, here they all are. If you get, especially you get a new DBA and he's not sure where all of his, or she, if they're not aware of where all their SQL servers are, you can definitely pick this up, look at it, and give them that information really quickly. All right, so the next one is the installed config manager roles. Now this will give you a list of all your distribution points, software update points, management points, so forth. I've been with a lot of customers who've had several hundred to 400 distribution points. So their pies would be a lot different than mine. Everything in my environment's on a single server, so everything's cut evenly. It's not a big deal. But you can see, you click on it, it'll filter it down. Same thing, click on the other piece and just kind of go through. This is more of like a general knowledge slide. There's really not a lot of updating in here unless you're constantly changing your environment, but it's a good indicator to tell you where everything's at in your environment. All right, so the next one and the big one is the OS versions. This is huge for OSD. Anything you're doing with, keeping your systems up to date. You can see here we get a pie chart of all of our OS versions, and then, that would be like Windows 10. And notice this is Windows 10 Pro and this is Windows 10 Enterprise. So the good thing with this is if you have something that are not Enterprise and you need them to be, you can say, hey, why is this guy Pro? Click on it. Oh, look, it's just a Windows 10 box that's on 1903, but he's not on Enterprise. Why not? Well, we need to figure that out. We need to go look at that machine, update the SKU on it, and fix it and get it upgraded to Enterprise. I actually had this deployed to a customer, and that we actually found out with their OSD process that they were deploying Student Edition or Education Edition in their environment for the latest 1909 version. And it turned out, well, whoops, someone accidentally changed the SKU in the task sequence, and now they're deploying education instead of enterprise. So that was a huge problem because the education edition doesn't have all the security requirements like BitLocker and all that other fun stuff that's required for their organization. So we were able to fix them and identify these really quickly just because we were able to pull this up, and we looked at the names over here on the left hand side and we found it, and they're like, oh, those are the ones we just imaged. I'm like, okay, well, there's something wrong then with our task sequence problem. And then we found out, oh, someone accidentally changed it. Not a big deal. We updated the task sequence. We went through and wrote a PowerShell script to update their SKU number, and off we went. But this was able to quickly identify all those. You can also, down here on the bottom, see that we get the build number in there, so we can see how many people are on 1809. In this case, my 1809 are my domain controller and my config manager box. So 1809 is not just for your Windows 10 version, it is also for your server version also. So in this case, it's 2019, which falls in line with the 1809. And then looking at, if you click on the 2004, you can see the 2004. You click on that, I get two workstations over there. And then on the top half, we can see those are my enterprise ones. I also have the numbers and percentages lined up with them. So we're good to go with that. And then going to the next one is our system security slide. And this one will tell you what version your TPM is, if your TPM is enabled, what version UEFI is, if you have SHA-256 enabled, if you have Secure Boot turned on, and if you have EBS, along with BitLocker, CredGuard, and if CredGuard's running. So it's one thing to have CredGuard turned on, it's another thing to have CredGuard actually running. So all this information is checked out. You get percentages on the bottom half to display all that information. And then we're going to go on to the next one, which is our BitLocker information. Now there's a lot of white space here, but that's just because my environment, I have two machines. Obviously in your environment, you'll have a lot more, so it'll fill this in very nicely. But the big thing we're looking at here is the conversion status is showing use space only. So again, if you're following the STIG process, their STIG requirement says you have to have full disk encryption, not space used. So in this case, I would have two systems that are in violation of that need to be addressed. Now, because I'm in an Azure lab, it is defaultly set to use space only, so that's okay. It's just it is what it is, and I don't plan on changing it, so it's just going to stay at use space only. But it's a great talking point while I'm doing demos and videos. The next thing is making sure protection status is turned on. We're good there, and making sure we have actually encryption status. And in this case, our encryption status is AES 256. We're good to go. That's what I'm looking for, and we're 100% compliant with that. All right, so the next one is the collections overview. This is huge for how many collections do you have in your environment, how long are they taking to run, and what's the refresh timer on that. You can see up here at the top, and we can adjust these as needed, obviously. But we can see that, a lot of these are, last time they changed were 169 days, 101 days, and you're thinking, wow, that's been a long time. Well, I don't have a lot of these set for, there's really nothing changed in my servers. I don't build out servers very often that require that change. Same with the workstations, right? You don't build out your workstations very often that you would need changes. You may, workstations may be a little different on that because you're re-imaging boxes and all that, but you're not actually changing the query to it or anything like that. But member change is different. So in this case, member change should actually change pretty often in your environment, depending on how many machines you're imaging at the time. But looking at the next one, this is the last time the refresh timer was. So this is 66 days, this is 4 days, and this is the last time someone's made any kind of change to the collection, and you get the timer on that. All right, and then we also have down here looking at the collection less than 5 members, and you might think, well, there's a lot of them down here. Well, some of them will be 0 as well, right? It really depends on what your collections are built for, but this has really helped to identify, do you have any 0 collections that someone created, don't need anymore? That's just in the system taking up space, taking up, database churns for, are they refreshing for no reason? Which brings me back to this pie chart right here. And this guy indicates, here's all your full schedules, here's your incremental with full schedules, and here's my no schedules at all. And if you click on no schedules, you can see it's my SCCM servers, and you might think, well, why do I not have anything in there? Well, how often do your SCCM servers change? Probably not very often. So I have those manually set, so I just run those as needed. It saves some database time, it helps you refresh on your update memberships, so it's really important to really evaluate what you're doing with your database and what you're doing with your collection memberships. I've had a lot of customers who just set everything to incremental and full, and I had one customer who had almost every single one of their queries set to incremental and full, and therefore all their evaluation times were like 20,000 seconds. And if you look at 20,000 seconds, you do the little math on that, it's like 5.5 days. And the fact that it's 5.5 days as an incremental, they were basically never running any updates on that. So it was taking, days to run update membership for collections. And it was getting ridiculous. So when we ran this, report in here, and we found that we were able to, like, okay, why are there so many incrementals? Microsoft only suggests and recommends 200. Anything over 200, you start seeing database issues, which they were clearly seeing. They also had a CAS and multiple primaries. So at that point, we were like, okay, what do we got to do to fix this? Well, in that case, we started to decrease all the incrementals. We turned off some of the collections that were, like, in their case, they were doing a reporting for server compliance, but they were only running this compliance like once a quarter. And then we were looking at it going, well, why is it set to incremental? And then why does it have a daily full schedule? So, all those things are just extra time and space that the database is doing for no reason. So, and because the memberships were set by hand and not set by a query, so it was set with a query, but the query was filtered off names. The names are provided by the person doing the reporting. Therefore, it would only change maybe, like I said, once a quarter. So turning that off, setting that to a no schedule, and then manually right-clicking and updating membership only when they made a change to it made more sense for that one. Once we started eliminating stuff like that, a lot of their 20,000 seconds went away, and we started seeing stuff in the 10 to 20, less than 10, which is really good area where you want to be in. You definitely want to be in these two ranges. You don't want to be down here in the higher range. All right, so going through all this some more, looking through at this, if you have anything in a 1020, or anything over 20, they'll be displayed here. Like I said, I don't have anything in mind, so we're good to go at this point. It also tells you the last person who's modified a collection. In this case, this is me, but it's also my lab, so therefore that would make sense it's me. And if you look down here, the number of collections I modified in the last 7 days, I've done 4, so that makes sense also. All right, so next one is the collections under 10. This gives us more detail of exactly what's going on with all of our collections. So if you look at, here's all of our collections, here's our current status of it, last member change, all the information we had on the other page, except for this information right here. This actually gives you the SQL query of what's being ran, and it'll help you quickly identify all your collections and what queries are running. Maybe you didn't know some of the queries that someone else has created that are using direct membership, but then they're also doing incremental changes along with full schedules like daily or something. And it's like, okay, why are we doing that if they don't need it? It's just something to help with that admin function. You can also look at the WQL query that's done. So this is actually done in the console. It tells you here's everything that's pulling. You can see there's a lot of them here that are select star from SMS_R_system. So it's like, okay, those are just basically pulling in everything. So if we want to click on that guy and figure out what is he, we scroll over. Oh, that makes sense. It's all systems. Okay, so that one's fine. We don't have to worry about that one. It's really going to depend on your environment. You're going to have to go through and evaluate what you need and kind of go from there. Okay, so the next one is 10 to 20. It's the same thing as the under 10, just for the collections that are between 10 and 20 seconds, and then above 20 seconds obviously will be the one everything above 20 seconds. All right, so the next one is baseline in items. So this is all your configuration baselines and your configuration items that you have deployed in your environment. It also gives you your collection name of what is there. I don't have any compliance count with those numbers. I figured I'd leave that to the reporting that's already in SECM, or config manager rather, just because it already does a great job with it. I just wanted an indicator of saying, look, here's what's deployed in case you wanted to look at what's going on with that. That was actually a request by one of my customers to do that. So I added it to the dashboard for everyone else to see. The next one is hardware inventory enabled. So the top half here will show you all the enabled classes that you have for your hardware inventory. And so this is like your default policy coming in, right? So here's everything that's done. And then you're going, okay, well, what's the custom one? Well, this is, say, in this case, I have deployed BitLocker settings, or sorry, bit settings is what I called it, to 1394 controller, and here's all the properties that I enabled on that. And I deployed it to the collection of all workstations. And that was just, I did it in my lab to just prove that you can actually identify and track all this. I didn't want this to be a blank field. I wanted it to be more information for you guys to kind of see this. But here's where the information is located at. So now we can at least know what's going on with that. All right, and the next one is maintenance tasks. And maintenance tasks, these are all the tasks that are in the SCCM console. Again, this is an informational page. It gives you a lot of, here's everything that's running, here's everything, last time it's ran. So if you're ever worried of like, oh, is all my stuff running? Come in here, you can pull it up real quick. You can get all of them, and you can even see what timers they're set to. So I was able to get all of them in there for daily, days of the week, weekdays, weekends. The only one I couldn't figure out how to do or display properly was if you pick like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule. I just set that to custom just because that's clearly what that is. It has no distinguishing pattern, and I didn't want to sit there and write all the possibilities of what you can run through from Monday through Sunday. So custom is for those oddball ones that are not in normal cycle of daily, a specific day of the week, weekends, or weekdays. And the last but not least is application deployment summary. So this is all your applications that you have deployed, and notice I said applications and not packages because I'm only tracking applications at this time. But it will give you all your applications and the in progress status, the requirements not met status, any errors that have happened, success, and then of course your success rate at the end. And that's hugely important for, if you're doing it off of a shop that has a lot of deployments and you need to say, oh, we need to have this compliance software on every machine, let's go check the compliance on it. Well, you can go and check and say, here, look, here's the status of it. We deployed at this date and time. Here's where we're at for the success so far, and give whoever needs to that information. And then down here in the bottom, we have application success, the success rate, any that are in progress, and any that are in error. I don't have any in progress. In error, I don't have any at the moment. I could probably mock one up real quick, but I'd have to purposely fail it like repeatedly. I tried doing that in another lab, and somehow it mysteriously fixed itself and became successful. So I'm a little confused on that, how that happened, which is why I did not do it in this lab. But it does work, just so if you guys are wondering. I had made it work, and it does work well. So the only other thing I want to bring up during this is when I was doing another video on this, there was multiple values here. It was, instead of 2, it was like 6, and I'm like, there's no way I only have 2 workstations in here. It turned out just to be a way that when the data loaded, it kind of glitched out. For whatever reason. I've had that happen with the Power BI before. If any of that ever happens where you're not seeing data that's correct for any reason and you need it refreshed, you can obviously hit the refresh button, which will refresh everything. But if you want to refresh a certain slide, so like in this case, workstation, find workstation, you right click, hit refresh data, and it's just going to refresh this table and this data information right here. And boom, it refreshed. Now, obviously this was already working, so there's no indication there. The only other huge problem I usually see in this, as you can see right here, on we have only workstations, but I believe that's because we have this filtered. Yep, I did not remove the filter, so we're going to remove that filter back. And we're going to remove this filter too. But for some reason, if you don't see your all servers, all workstations, and your whatever your last one is, oh good, it didn't work as I wanted it to. So I can show you this. So you can see there's all workstations, all servers, but you might think, where was the other category? For some reason, this did not load. And I'm not sure why it does that. It just kind of does that. And I think it's because the combined loads before the other 3 load first, so it kind of gets ahead of itself. But like you can see, I hit refresh, and now we get the rest of that. So that's just something to be, it's a little quirky. I have not seen that in the web version, which I'm going to show you here right now. So if you go into the Config Manager console, remember where we deployed the patch, not patch, the Power BI. You can actually see it right here in your Config Manager. And if you hit run in browser, it's going to open this up. And let that load the data, and it's going to load the same data that you're running from here, but it's going to do it in the browser form. All right, so in here, it did not load the all patches either. So let's see if I can figure out how to refresh this from here. Might have to just hit the refresh button again, because all of our filters that are on the other page are not there. All right, so that's something I will have to take note on. I will make a note on the bottom of the page on how to fix that. I do apologize for that. I'm not sure why it was doing that, but it's just one of those things that, again, Power BI has kind of got a mind of its own sometimes. But you can see all this information still here. And if you look at the OS version, obviously we get all this data here again. And notice it's just it's browser. So anybody can view this. It's really not that big of a deal. You can just give them the URL and off they go. Now, the only thing I would like to point out here is if you go to the actual Power BI report server, we're going to open this guy up. And let me find my Power BI reporting title. I apologize. I always have a hard time finding it. Here it is. All right, so if you want this guy, and where did my other one go? Is he on the top level? He is on the top level. All right, so say I wanted this guy on a refresh timer. You're like, I don't want to have to republish this report every time. So if you go to the little ellipsis, hit manage. If you go down here, see there's a refresh schedule. You can add a new schedule and call it, whatever you want. Daily, hourly. In this case, we're going to do hourly, right? Because we want this data to be pretty up to date and current. So we're going to edit schedule. We're going to share that hourly. And starting at 2 a.m., starting today, we're good with that. Hit apply. Create refresh schedule. So now it's going to refresh every hour and get me fresh data. And it will do it on the top of the hour. So, in this case, we'd have to wait 20 minutes. I'm not going to have 20 minutes of dead air just to have it. but it will display that information so it gets refreshed, and that dashboard that we saw before will refresh in the next page, and hopefully it'll work this time. If not, you can always republish the report here and get it pushed out that way, which let's see if we can do that real quick before we do anything else. Okay, so it's there, we're good. Overwrite, yes. And notice you can hit take me there. All right, so notice now that we have all of our data there. Oh, and it still didn't load the bottom half. Isn't that nice? So again, it's getting better, but it's something I'll have to work at. But if you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment in the bottom. And if you have any suggestions, please, reach out to me on LinkedIn, do it off GitHub, do it off the YouTube video that's down here, and in the comments section. And if you have any questions, please let me know. And thank you for attending the videos, and I hope you learned something.